with the first submittal I got, it jumped all the way to 100%. And I still had 5 or 6 conditions that were pending or I still hadn't been evaluated for. What I would consider you guys were my accountability buddy. I could have never done this by myself. I would have never been that thorough. I joined the military straight out of high school. I enlisted in the Navy right before I graduated. I entered the delayed entry program for the Navy nuclear power program. November of 2007 is when I left to go to boot camp. Graduated. I started at Nuclear Field A School in January of 2008. I went through the pipeline. We had some delays in the pipeline in that time. So it was 2009 in December when I had graduated at the end of the pipeline. It's about an 18-month program for the Navy nuclear training program. And I reported to my ship, the USS Maine Gold Crew out of Bangor, Washington. I was stationed there for about 4 years. I went through a bunch of different duties and stuff like that, eventually getting to be the leading petty officer of my division. After about 4 years on the Maine in January of 2014, I transferred to the Nuclear Power Training Unit in Charleston, South Carolina, to go back to the training pipeline to teach up-and-coming nuclear operators. I was stationed there for about 3.5 years. I finished out my active duty time there. I had a couple kids at that point, and we wanted to kind of settle down, and I didn't want to go on deployments anymore because I was very fortunate. My kids were born after I was done going out on patrols and stuff like that. So I got off active duty. I stayed in the reserves for about 4 years just because I didn't want to let go of the military lifestyle. And in 2021 was when my reserve contract ended, and we had a third daughter. So initially, I was actually very fortunate. I got rated 70% at my discharge date, and I was pretty happy and content. I didn't challenge anything. I attended all my appointments, and I thought it was pretty fortunate considering that was the end of my 10 years of active duty. I was still in the reserves at the time, so I didn't necessarily try to pursue more at the time. So I was pretty fortunate in that regard. I was actually successful by myself and was pretty happy with what I got at first. So when I first got out, I moved to Alabama and I was stationed in Alabama, and I worked with um, prior service gentleman as well, and he was like me. He put in for benefits at discharge, and he was rated, but he was like, "Man, I have all these other issues. I don't feel like we're handled appropriately." And he was actually using your company, and this was back in, I want to say, 2019. He told me about using Trajector to pursue getting his benefits increase, and he was successful. And I was like, "Man, I got to keep the name of this company." And I think at the time you guys were called Veterans Compensation, and it was a different name. It was like Vet Comp and Pen that they had used. And I remember specifically saving that web address to be like, like I should look into this when I'm ready. At the time, I was still in the reserves, and I didn't want to pursue any more benefits. And I probably recommended using that company to 4 or 5 different people that I'd met, including my mother, actually, who was prior in the Army and the Marine Corps. And everybody that used this company at that point had actually gotten their benefits from it. They either got a benefit increase or had gotten benefits after nothing. And my mom was actually one of those. So, like, as far as I was concerned at that point, you guys were batting 1,000. And I was like, anybody and everybody that had mentioned looking into it or what benefits they had, if they weren't at 100%, I was like, hey, if it's something you want to pursue, I'd recommend using this company. And it was kind of funny because I had never called you guys, but I recommended you several times. When I put in for the increase, I actually really didn't know where to start because I had conditions that I was rated for, and I knew it was a different process if I wanted to put in for an increase, or things that I was previously denied for, or even new conditions that I'd never put in for originally that were service connected. So the process that Trajector had, I thought, was pretty thorough as far as my initial talk that made me feel pretty positive about it. So I watched the little bit of information I put down, turn into a pretty significant story of information. So then when the forms were sent to me to review before they were submitted, I was like, I could have never done this by myself. I would have never been that thorough. My initial package at the end of May of this year, and then it was in, I think it was August actually. Like it was very quick that I saw a deposit in my account, my direct deposit, and I was like, "Whoa, where's this coming from?" Because it wasn't an amount that looked familiar, and I kind of chased it down, and I didn't get my letter. I didn't find out from Trajector. It was actually just like money showing up out of the blue that I found out. I was like, "Hey, I might have got a benefit increase." So I kind of pursued it, and then I found my initial letter through the VA.gov website, and I was able to see what was successful and what wasn't. And it was interesting because, like, even out of the gate with the first submittal I got, it jumped all the way to 100%, and I still had 5 or 6 conditions that were pending, or I still hadn't been evaluated for. Um, it, but it was the periodic updates from you guys as far as like when the initial appointments got scheduled, when my CMP exam and stuff like that. If I didn't have like what I would say is an accountability buddy, I might have missed those appointments, or I might not have been as thorough checking my email. So like a lot of what I would consider you guys were my accountability buddy. There's 2 more people post my 100% that I recommended you guys to that put packages in recently. That way you don't potentially miss something, and the help you guys provided. But I mean, seeing that change, I mean, the amount doubled going from 70% to 100% for me. So that was pretty significant just to see that amount change every month. And because of that, I knew at least one thing, being service connected versus being 100%, and mine was actually total and permanent. The big jump from that, I knew one thing was um, county taxes. So I get forgiveness now for a county property tax for a vehicle and the property tax on my home. Kind of a little bit extra peace of mind now that if something did happen and for whatever reason I was out of work, I have the Champa or the Chant VA benefit that I could use for myself or my family to make sure I can still provide and take care of my family. I have a small amount of guaranteed income now that I can know I can fall back on and kind of help make myself a more comfortable cushion if something unforeseen like COVID comes up again, and maybe I'm out of work or I'm dealing with sequester or something like that. Um, it it was like a weight being lifted off my shoulders I didn't even know was there.